This is OwlUp, where learning happens in minutes, not hours. For a deeper journey, explore all our courses at owlup.co. Now, let's dive in. Welcome back to Chapter 2 of our series, OKRs, A Manager's Guide to Driving Results. In this episode, titled Setting Meaningful Objectives, we'll explore what truly makes an objective meaningful and how it can drive your team's success. So, let's dive in. Midway through a busy quarter, two managers set goals. One team hits every task, yet the business barely moves. The other misses a few targets, but unlocks a major win. Same effort, wildly different impact. The twist is this: the difference wasn't effort, it was the objectives. A 72% profitability gap. That's the difference LSA Global reports between companies whose people pull in the same direction and those that don't. Even if that number needs a second look, the pattern is clear. When people's daily effort lines up with what truly matters, performance follows. Yet most managers still write targets that read more like to-do lists than outcomes. They're neat, organized, and strangely disconnected from the real bets the business is placing. This is where frameworks like SMART and OKRs quietly change the game. Not because they're trendy acronyms, but because they force a different kind of conversation. What will be measurably true if we succeed? And why does that matter up there, not just in our corner? When that question becomes routine, something shifts. Meetings get sharper, trade-offs get simpler, and cross-functional friction turns into forward motion. Here's the trap many managers fall into. They polish wording, add metrics, and stack up initiatives, but skip the harder move, choosing what not to pursue. The real leverage comes from a smaller set of intentional bets that clearly ladder up to the few priorities your company is actually staking this quarter on. That's why high-performing teams revisit and refine their direction regularly. They treat it less like a one-off planning document and more like an evolving draft. Think of it as curating an art exhibit. You're not just filling walls, you're telling a coherent story about what matters now and what can wait. Here's where meaningful objectives start to earn their keep. In the messy middle of real work, when priorities collide, resources are thin, and everyone is busy, but you're not sure with what. Most managers stop at measurable and time-bound. Strong managers go one layer deeper and ask three tougher questions before they lock anything in. 1. Does this describe an outcome, not just movement? The litmus test. If someone can complete it and nothing important has changed, it's not ready. Launch new customer onboarding emails sounds active, but the world looks the same the next day. Increase week 4 activation rate from 40% to 60% for new customers forces you to care about what happens after the emails exist. When you write objectives this way, they become a scoreboard for change, not a scrapbook of activity. 2. Can I draw a clean line to a bet that's above my pay grade? Think across 2 levels, your department and the company. If the company is pushing margin, how does your faster support response objective show up in margin math? If the business is chasing market share, how does your brand refresh show up in awareness or trial? If you can't tell that story in 2 sentences, you either have the wrong objective or the wrong timing. 3. Is this just hard enough that we'll have to work differently, not just harder? The stretch is where learning lives. Set it too low and people coast. Push it into fantasy and they quietly disengage. The sweet spot usually feels like, we'd be a bit nervous putting this in a leadership deck, but we wouldn't be embarrassed. Notice what that demands from you as a manager. You must be explicit about what won't get done so the team can lean into the stretch without burning out. Research backs this calibration work. Teams that revisit and adjust objectives during the cycle, not just at the edges, are far more likely to sustain high performance. It's not the document that matters, it's the recurring conversation about, is this still the most valuable thing we could hit, given what we now know? To make this practical, constrain the playing field. Limit yourself to 3 to 5 objectives at the team level. Treat each one like a scarce slot in a prestigious exhibition. If you add a new piece, something else has to come off the wall. That forced trade-off is not a paperwork nuisance, It is the managerial job. The more consistently you do this, the more something subtle happens. People begin to pre-filter their own work. They start asking, unprompted, which objective does this move? That's when you know your objectives have stopped being a planning artifact and started to become the way your team thinks. A practical way to feel the difference is to watch how choices change in the moment. Say your product team is debating where to spend the next 2 sprints. One engineer pushes for refactoring an aging module. Another argues for a feature customers keep asking for. Without a sharp outcome in mind, the argument becomes about preference and technical aesthetics. With a clear target like reduce time to first value for new users, suddenly you can ask, which option moves this faster? The decision gets less personal and more directional. In a sales context, contrast have more customer conversations with increase win rate in our top 3 segments. The former can justify almost any activity. The latter forces focus on deal quality, qualification, and coaching. Over a quarter, you'll notice one-to-ones shift from pipeline volume to pattern spotting. What's different about the deals we close? Like tuning a camera lens, a slight shift in what you're aiming to capture can turn a blurry scene into something crisp enough to act on. Soon, managers may spend less time drafting plans and more time editing suggestions from AI. Tools will notice patterns you miss, like a quiet dip in a region or channel, and propose sharper direction before it becomes a slide in a QBR. That also raises the bar on judgment. Anyone can accept a recommendation. The advantage shifts to leaders who can ask, is this trade-off worth it here, now? Those are the teams that turn insight into durable advantage. Treat this as ongoing craft, not a one-off exercise. Over time, you'll notice patterns. Some metrics are noisy, some stretch levels are demoralizing, some links to strategy prove weak. That's useful data. Like a chef refining a signature dish with each tasting, you're learning what truly moves your team from busy to genuinely consequential. Here's your challenge this week. Take one goal you're already working toward and rewrite it as a single outcome-based objective that answers, what will be different in 90 days that isn't true today? Then add 3 concrete, measurable key results. For example, ship V1 of the onboarding flow to 100 beta users. Hold 3 customer interviews. Reduce support tickets on sign-up by 20%. That clearly show whether you're winning or not. Before the end of today, share this objective and key results with one person on your team and ask them to challenge anything that sounds like a task instead of an outcome. This was OwlUp, your daily step forward. To keep learning with structured courses and more insights, go to owlup.co. Until tomorrow!